Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to an episode of CAOverwatch. As always, we have Chris with us today in studio. Chris?
Hello, in studio, as in my apartment building.
And we also have a very special guest in which we've been trying to get on the show for a long time, so I'm super excited to have him on, Richard. Richard from, obviously, you guys know him from Toronto Defiant Flight. Richard, how's it going?
Hey, everything's going really well. It's a wonderful day in Toronto. We have retained Roki.
Yeah, exactly. So for those of you who don't know, we have a super exciting show for you guys today. We're going to touch on, one, Richard and how he got Alpha Flight started and all of that stuff. And then two, we're going to get it started on, obviously he's done a lot of work with the Hong Kong Overwatch team, and you guys have seen the tweets about the jerseys and stuff like that, so that's very exciting. And then three, we're going to talk about, the roster mania that is the Toronto Defiant, who's been let go, who's staying, and who do we want to see in the future. So let's just get right into it.
Let's get into this. Okay, Richard. So for those who don't know you, which I'd be surprised if anybody didn't know you.
Oh, come on now.
Tell us a little more about yourself. And I guess I don't even know this. I want to know why you got into, initially Five Deadly Venoms and now the Toronto Alpha Flight. Like, what led you to the place where you are now?
Ooh, that's a
big
big
question.
I have been asked that before, though, because I've always thought that I'm a little bit of an unusual sort of bloke in the scene because I'm so far outside of the target demographic. Like, I'm an old school gamer, man. Before Overwatch, I'm gonna date myself, okay? Before Overwatch, the game that I played most online was Battlefield Vietnam.
Whoa.
I haven't even heard of that one. I was going to say, I don't
haven't
think
even heard of that one either.
Battlefield 2.
You haven't heard of that one? Okay,
No, not
greatest
Battlefield Vietnam.
soundtrack. Battlefield Vietnam had the greatest soundtrack ever. I mean, the fact that you could fly in a chopper to Creedence Clearwater Revival, to some CCR, and you're just firing. It was like living in the film Hamburger Hill or Platoon. I was out of gaming, actually, to be totally honest, for about 15 years. So, my day job, I sort of gave it up when I went into music production. I spent a whole lot of time doing music production in the drum and bass scene, doing some DJing. And when you're into music, you have to basically get rid of all the components on a computer you will need to play a game.
Yeah.
The last active game I sort of played was, and this is when it got dark, it was getting really dark. I played Star Trek Online on console.
What?
Wow.
I know.
I didn't even add Star Trek on a console, yeah.
Those were dark days.
Star Trek.
Those were dark days, my friend, when you're in an MMO on a console. So I actually had a friend at the time, Zach Miller, who I was working with in my day job. So my day job, I'm a data analytics lead in the agency world. And my colleague kept saying, "Oh, you got to get Overwatch, man. You got to get Overwatch." And I was like, yeah, sure. And finally I picked it up on console, of course, because I had a PS4. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. But basically what had happened was I knew I was ending my time most likely in New York. I was a visa worker, so I knew my time was kind of coming up, and I really felt that I didn't want to be one of those folks that sort of came to New York or went in on a work visa and you just raid a city or an economy for its money and you leave nothing behind. New York is full of people who are expats from other cities, who get new SIM cards so people don't know their original and real area codes. They kind of recreate themselves, right, in the melange, right, that is New York City. So, of course I was big in Overwatch, but it really kind of came to a head when I went to New York Comic Con. So this was New York Comic Con 2017. And everyone's in cosplay, and I'm walking through, and I see this kid dressed as Soldier 76, head to toe, right? It was the coolest thing. He had the jacket, he had the visor, he had the pulse rifle, which was gigantic, right, on a kid. And I run over and I was like, oh my God, it's Soldier 76 and he's reporting for duty. And his mom, you can see her eyes light up because she's super excited that someone's seeing this costume that she probably worked her butt off of making. Because she had a totally handcrafted Wonder Woman costume, which was super cool too. So I just started talking to him about how awesome his costume is, and his mom goes, hey, so are there any bad guys around? And I'm like, people from Talon, come on now. Even if there were, he'd just get him in his sights.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
yeah,
and the kids laughing.
Yeah.
It was super awesome, right? But the thing that was so poignant about the that moment is that kid was in a mechanical wheelchair, like right up to his neck with a brace. And if you were to look at his hands, you know that he'd never be able to play this game. He's definitely never played it, right? He can't hold that controller.
Yeah.
Yet here he is, so inspired by this story of a soldier, of a human, of a person, right, that has been sort of rebuilt from a broken body when the world needed heroes, right? And then went on to pull off these incredible feats. You know, here's a kid who could never play and yet is so inspired by that notion that here he is dressed head to toe as his hero. And I said, I made a decision that day that I knew I wanted to give back to New York. I wanted to do something important and useful in the world. And that's when I realized that, you know, maybe there is something within this realm of Overwatch that can do this. So, you know, when the league was announced, I was really kind of curious about what's going on, and I wrote to this. I could only, you know, I started writing around because I figured I don't want to watch this game by myself at home. And the missus is already, at this point, because I've had Overwatch on console, she's a little bit annoyed because she's like, this is all that's on the TV all the time.
Yeah, give me attention, right? Yeah.
Oh, it came to a head when I was like doing some call-outs with my friend Biggs, player out in Portland. And she literally stood in front of the television while I'm playing. And she's like, is this all I'm going to see? Like, for the rest of my life? Am I never going to use the television again? Yeah. And it was when I realized it's time to go out of home, like everyone else should, and share some space, right? So I started reaching out to random places. There's a place that had been doing some League of Legends events. So I wrote to them asking if they're showing the Overwatch games. They never responded. And then by chance, I found this one spot as my search engine, you know, habits were degrading to that of like an ape from 2001 trying to communicate with the monolith. Like, I'm just like hammering on the keyboard, like, New York, computer.
Yeah. At one point,
venue,
you're clicking, I'm feeling lucky, like you're that desperate. You're like, it's just.
I was that desperate. And there's this place, and it's like called the Waypoint Cafe. And it had opened in September, so just a few months earlier.
Oh, awesome.
So I go in. And I send them a note. I'm like, hey, are you guys going to be showing the Overwatch League games? And I get a response right away from Gino, and he goes, yeah, but we're only going for Excelsior, our hometown team. I hope you're okay with that. And I was like, I'm totally fine with that. Perfect. And I love that he responded like that. He goes, yeah, but only for New York, just so you know, right? So I walk in, and you know, basically I'm at this party of one, and I started trying to rally folks on the New York Excelsior Discord. And like really old school rave type stuff. Like, it was like a roll call. I made a Google sheet where you like wrote your name and you said how many people were in your party, you know, because I wanted to sort of communicate back with the owners. And we show up, and sort of 12 people just show up that first day. I set up a little like Twitch stream that day just to like record us watching the game, like, as a joke.
Yeah.
So, you know, there was this reporter from ESPN who just happened to be coming by. And he's like, yeah, I've been trying to find out what's going on for the home games. I found this spot. Can I take a look? I was like, sure. Take some pictures, post it online. Somehow that post makes it to Puckett on the desk.
Oh, yeah.
Chris and that Puckett. Guy, being such an awesome guy, gives us a shout-out on day one, on the end of the game, of the first day of New York's games. He gives us a shout-out. Room blows up. Everyone's excited. And then just from there, I just basically started... I just showed up every single game. So the next day we only had 4 people, and then it just kept going and going, and eventually, you know, all of a sudden, you know, basically it was after the Seoul versus Excelsior game that like the venue exploded that day.
Yeah, huge rivalry from Apex and stuff, right? So
yeah, and I still remember the call, and it's like, you know, it's like, welcome the new Kings of Overwatch, right? I think that was Semler's call that day. And then that pop made it to the desk. And then the league sent in a team to like kind of meet us. And it just kind of became this thing that was like, you know, just this amazing environment for everybody. And long story short, that goes on for a year. But then I come to Toronto. I move back to Toronto. And, you know, what do? Right? Yeah. You know, you kind of have to leave behind like the biggest crew, street crew in the league. And you know, it kind of dawned on me, I don't want to be that person that's does nothing but talk about how much they did in New York.
Yeah,
like,
the good old days.
That guy.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah, man, when I was in New York.
I exactly. It's like, well, I'll have you know.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be that guy. But then what it came down to was, basically in November there was a big accident in my family, and a lot of stuff happened, and I had been mulling over what to do, and basically what it came down to was I said, you know what, I made a promise to my moms that I'll try to do something good in this city too. So I started off just trying to do the same kind of thing, kind of get people together around the Defiant games. And then it's sort of, here we are today. So it's nothing really sort of crazy and premeditated or planned. It was, I guess just a lot of showing up when maybe no one else was there, but helping people realize that there's always a door open so that they can connect, maybe not over just the game, but maybe within the context of the game. Because everyone's kind of lonely and isolated these days, right? There's no social capital, or everyone's bowling alone, or they get together and they're alone together, right? Isolated and disconnected with phones. So I said, why don't we just get people talking again? Kind of like what D&D is for a lot of folks. We need an excuse to go out and communicate and connect, and oddly enough, amazingly enough, it worked.
Well, no, I mean, for one, I think it's super lucky that you had. I mean, obviously, once you come back to Toronto, it's really nice that Toronto then gets an Overwatch League team that year that you return, right? So obviously, that was a fantastic.
I'm the luckiest guy.
Yeah, super.
I'm like the lucky. Like, what are the chances, right, that my two cities both have Overwatch League teams? Like, that's luck. It's luck. I'm not going to say it's anything else.
But also, you look at, like, I think one of the things that, and I completely agree with you, that Overwatch is missing. Like, when the Leafs play, I mean, I'm not a big Leafs fan. I'm more of a Habs fan, but regardless, I know. Don't judge me too hard, please. When the Leafs, I'm a Raptors fan. Sorry, when the Raptors play, it's nice to be able to go to the bar and watch Raptors with a bunch of different people. So I love the fact that you can sort of get that same mentality and the camaraderie and the experience that goes into, like, hey man, the Raptors are playing. You want to go to the bar and watch the Raptors play. Esports as a whole was missing that, especially in Toronto. So it was super nice that I think Alpha Flight kind of brought that thing to the table.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
What was and just to add to that, like, what led you to naming both these associations?
So Five Deadly Venoms is based on a couple things. So one, I effing love Wu-Tang. Like, I grew up listening to a ton of Wu-Tang when I was a kid. I thought it was a group of Chinese rappers coming out of New York. I legit, because their faces were covered in, everything was like mythical, right, in music those days. It's a group of kung fu fighting guys out of New York, and it's like, it was crazy. But there's a sort of, like, if you understand New York's culture, right, where hip hop comes from, there's like a deep connection to old school kung fu movies, like Shaw Brothers movies. You hear stories about people going to the Deuce to watch movies, and you basically paid a couple dollars, and then you basically went from theater to theater to just stay in the air conditioning, and then you just saw a ton of, like, Chen Quan Tai movies and things like that, right? Yeah. So there's this deep connection to, like, hip hop. The Waypoint as a venue is located right on the corner of Chinatown, right? It's the Lower East Side, and there's 5 boroughs in New York. So I wanted to kind of give it a name that was influenced by those old movies, Five Deadly Venoms, or Five Venoms being one of them. And it was to speak to, like, there's 5 boroughs in New York, each with their own, like, unique style. So I wanted something that could speak to the reality, sort of like what New York culture was, and kind of, like, connect to this culture of, like, hip hop, music, kung fu movies, and, like, what it was to come out of, like, the LES at that time. Because I spent a lot of time, as you can imagine, not surprisingly, hanging out in Chinatown. And around the corner from Waypoint was my old kung fu school, USA Shaolin Temple. That's cool. So and my old shofu, Shu Yanming, is the guy who taught the Wu-Tang. So I just kind of, like, wanted to bring that all together, because that's a true story of New York that, people might not know, and I thought that was kind of awesome. With Toronto, I grew up a huge aviation nerd as a kid, because of my brother. He was really into jet fighters. So, you always hear about these great stories of that mythical, status of the Avro Arrow. And basically, the launch of Overwatch League this year was the 60th anniversary of Avro Black Friday. So the day we canceled the Arrow project, all those engineers went out of jobs, and oddly enough, many of them ended up in the U.S. space program, right? So the idea was, I wanted a name that helped reflect Basically some of the spirit of Toronto's legacy of like engineering, because Toronto was always the kind of grubby city compared to Montreal. If you wanted culture and coolness and style, you don't go to Toronto. You go to Montreal, right? That Toronto's like Hogtown. It's the big smoke. We had machine plants. Heck, the part of Liberty Village that I work out of, in some like Liberty Village is like former munitions area. Right, we built munitions here. Ronnie the Bren gun girl built Bren guns at the Inglis factory on Strawn. Like that's our culture in this part of the city. So I wanted something that sort of spoke to all of that, because Toronto has a lot of scrap and rebuild culture. So Toronto Alpha Flight, the whole idea is you're the first wing of defense. The Avro Arrow, the way it was designed, it had a sort of a slouching butt on its design because it was designed to have a high angle of attack, right? High angle of attack is, you refer to it as high alpha performance. It's the ability to fly forward, move forward while maintaining sort of an observation, like looking up and skyward, right? That's why the logo is a delta, plus we love anime here, so a little bit was like, it sounds anime. It's kind of like Macross and Robotech, right? Pat Labor, all that stuff, Gundam. So even the logo was designed as like, that delta, if you count it out, it's made up of it's six-sided. It's a six-sided delta, which is very hard to do from a design perspective. But we did the 6 pieces to represent, of course, the six amalgamated cities in Toronto. But each of them is, represents and comes together to form that jet fighter, which has those little dog ears cut out of the wing, which is a nod to the Aero project. And it's flying northeast because it was supposed to be the direction from the original Blizzard Arena to Toronto.
You know what? I gotta say, that is probably one of the deepest histories behind both of those names I've ever heard. Sometimes you think of guys, think of people making up names just in the back room, be like, oh, what sounds good, like what's cool. This is like, wow, it's like a lot of deep history behind this, and I actually think it's quite amazing. It's pretty cool.
I've always felt that there's so much history of Toronto that we kind of gloss over, and it's lost. And look, the same way that in New York it was about kind of coming together on kung fu movies and 5DV stuff, it almost is like the way I joke, it's almost like an after school program for people who are like over the age of 17, generally speaking. And Alpha Flight's the same thing. There's a lot of lack of sort of knowing what we can truly appreciate in this city. Like there's an amazing legacy of engineering and innovation and tenacity, toughness in Toronto that, these days we're like, it's Toronto versus the world, but it's always been Toronto. Toronto's never should have survived. Toronto should have never succeeded as a city, yet we did. And I think that's something we can all be proud of.
No, I completely agree.
So let's get into some Overwatch.
Yeah, no, I'm down. I'm down to start talking about some Overwatch. You want to go right into that?
Yeah, let's what I want to do is I want to talk, I think first and foremost, about roster changes.
Do you want to go roster changes, or do you want to go right into what Richard's work with the Hong Kong stuff was? Or do you want to do that after?
Whatever. What do you think? What do you want to do, Sven?
Let's do the Hong Kong stuff first. There's some cool stuff that Rich has been doing with the Hong Kong Overwatch team. Obviously, you guys have seen the jerseys and stuff like that. So I think we should go from. I think it's cool to go from like Alpha Flight and the creation of that to what he's doing now.
Okay.
Cool.
So Richard, tell us about it. I know I've seen the tweets, and obviously it was really cool that you got that opportunity.
Yeah.
And I saw the recent tweet you put out today. So like, share us some of that news. So share us some of that exciting news.
It's funny. So I really, one of the things that, as you guys can see through the supporters clubs, is I do a lot of apparel design within the space. 5EV's got its line. Toronto Alpha Flight has a line. I'm doing work with Revival and Contenders. We've got an upcoming line for them, which is going to be friggin' awesome. I can't wait till that lands because I don't know many Contenders level teams, T2 teams that have a full merchandise and apparel line. But I really wanted to do something for the World Cup. And look, not for nothing, I'm not going to lie. I really had this kind of dream to do something for Team Canada.
Yeah, I know. You're close.
But yeah, and the thing is, it's like, look, the time I guess just wasn't right. It's just not within the plans. Cool, it's fine. Like things happen. I get it. But as I was looking around, Hong Kong has such a small Overwatch program. Like it's a tiny program. The internet connections stink in Hong Kong. Like it's amazing that anybody can play any FPS at like a high level. Like it's tough, right? So I, actually reached out to them and I said, hey, you know, I, are you guys interested at all in getting some support to maybe design like a fan shirt? And Derek, the GM, wrote back and he goes, oh yeah, that'd be pretty cool. It's we hadn't seen what the designs looked like, but the Overwatch World Cup jerseys tend to be fairly standardized. And Derek said, yeah, I actually know your stuff from 5DV. Do you think you could whip up something like that? So what I ended up doing is I basically sponsored the team for their apparel build. So I worked with Raven. I covered the costs to cover the cost of the designers. I always work with the designers because I'm colorblind and I can't draw. I also broke my hand like years ago, so I just don't write very well. So I always work with a designer. I kind of design a full brief. You build the mood boards, and I worked with Raven and basically sponsored Hong Kong to create an alternate jersey for them, just to give them something that I felt it kind of lives up to the style and the goals, right? Like the style code, right, of Hong Kong, something with a little bit more flair. In this case, it was heavily influenced by late 90s badminton design. So if Hong Kong people, they play a lot of badminton. We play a lot of we love badminton. So I was looking at reviews of old Yonex designs and things like that from the late 90s and trying to bring back some of that style. And then we basically the way we set it up is whenever you do these sort of esports apparel deals, if you're a team, you typically get a royalty fee on all the sales. And what I made sure is that we just assign all the royalties over to the Hong Kong Overwatch team to just be part of a fundraiser because they have to pay their own way, right, to get to the OWWC. And then, it was interesting. We launched it, and then, there's more tension around, I guess, what's going around Hong Kong these days. And, it's just kind of been interesting because, the people have really taken to the design. And I think it's pretty cool, right? Because, look, Ireland, huge shout out to everybody at Team Ireland. Were the first team to launch their alternate. I think theirs is super cool.
Yeah.
Reminds me of a pint of Guinness, which I kind of dig. And then right after Hong Kong announced theirs, Team UK, right? Seven Lions put out their kit. So it's kind of this cool way where you realize that people do want to express themselves and grassroots design through apparel and this, especially for something that is really at its core, it's community funded, right? The communities have to come together to fund folks to get there. And I think what better way to cap that off than to give them a design that came from a community, right? And yeah, it's been pretty wild to see the response to the kid.
Yeah, no, and obviously, I mean, you guys recently hit your goal. I believe that's one of the things that you shared out. I think the jerseys look sick. So I pulled it up. It took me a bit to find it, but eventually I got it up on the screen here. So everyone got to check that out. So if you guys are curious or you want to check it out or you want to maybe purchase it or something like that, it's on Twitter. You just search up Hong Kong alternate jerseys and it's all right there. It looks awesome.
Yeah,
so
and then the team. Thank you. Yeah, and then there was a huge run on donations. The team just hit their funding goal.
Yeah, which is huge.
This morning, which is look, I mean, like I said, it's a small program. Hong Kong's not known. We're better at FGC than FPS. I'll just say that. So it's pretty wild to be able to see that. Again, at least it's always great when a team can make it there, especially given how many teams have run into challenges around the ability to self-fund. I keep up with the Bulgarian team. One of the players on Revival, Boger, is one of their players, and it's been tough, right? It's tough when you don't have the means or the exposure to, I guess, what would be partnership and sponsorship outreach, the infrastructure to help make these things happen. It's all about experience, and what we're seeing is there's an experience deficit that is hitting these grassroots Overwatch or esports organizations, and it's not much different than the experience deficit that the average Canadian will face, through education or through their first entry-level jobs, which have largely become very difficult to come by, right? So I said, do you want to be the people that sit and say, well, the kids these days and youth these days have no understanding or appreciation of what it takes to get there or to get somewhere, but then also at the same time not show right? People how to get there, not give them the means. I didn't. Again, I guess I've always felt that you never want to be somebody who will sit back and castigate somebody over their lack of ability to perform while simultaneously not providing the means of education and exposure
Exactly.
to help them eventually perform. Because then you're just kind of a jerk, right? And who wants that? Like, we don't need that right now. So it's pretty cool. I have a feeling that there'll be more designs coming out in the future. I mean, and look, even like I said, I think I noticed the Team China has a fan shirt, which is really cool. Like, it's a cotton-based garment, not dye-sub, but you can see people are, we're growing into this space, and I think that's such an amazing thing because it's so important to have a natural connection between a community or population and any kind of sporting endeavor. Otherwise, it's just a TV show with colorful costumes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, just on the donation. So, if you could just remind me and everybody listening, what are the donations going towards? They're going towards the flight and accommodations. Is that correct?
So it's flight, it's accommodations, and food budgets.
Okay.
Derek, the GM at Hong Kong, again, he big believer in showing the ways to get somewhere. He released his full budget, so it even has the stipend for food costs per day. This is like he really he built a budget that would not look dissimilar to something someone might see for a forecast for a project, right? In the private sector. So it was flight, accommodation, food. It was really covering the basics, and their cost was trickier than a lot of folks because of the distance. The Pacific crossing is not a small one. No. And it's one of those cases where the funding formula, again, it's a challenge. So, but yeah, it's like I said, they just hit 100%. It's, like I said it in a tweet earlier, I never imagined a time where the Hong Kong Overwatch team, would get support. Yeah. Like if it's different if you're Canada or the US or France, the UK,
It's easy. It's nice to see the small guy win. Like, even if it's like a small win, like gain the funding to be able to participate. It gets people involved with other success, and people always like to bet on the small guy because it's what makes sports and esports fun.
I completely agree.
Hey, yeah. I mean, look at the TI, right? Yeah. The small team making it all the way and then winning.
Yeah.
The international, right? Like, it's pretty crazy, but that's what sports is, and that's what competition is, right?
Exactly.
Of course, we want to see the Battle of Goliaths. You want to see the Golden States, versus what would have been like,
the Toronto Raptors,
like the Cleveland. I know. Yeah, but then it was kind of awesome to see like the Raptors,
LA Lakers, right? Like, you want to see those two built-up teams next year face off against each other. But you're absolutely right. It's really cool to see these like teams that nobody expected make this run that nobody saw coming and succeed. Exactly.
St. Louis Blues, right? The St. Louis Blues. Last place. Oh my God, last place. Halfway through the season, a team of random people who are not castaways, but the ones who couldn't quite find their fit. This is the island of misfit toys, and they won the Stanley Cup. Yeah, like really cool it's you can't. Bennington, right? You go from this guy is maybe a second stringer to you became the anchor of a team, and that's we in the World Cup for soccer. We always talk about that new team that comes in, right?
In soccer a few years ago, right, where they're like they just made it to the Premier League and they went on that huge run. I forget.
Oh yeah, I mean that would be I mean Leicester City. All of a sudden you won the championship. You won league. Right. But we've always had this, once upon a time it was Cameroon in soccer, right? The Indomitable Lions. And then it was Ghana, right? Right now in the Overwatch, in the Rugby World Cup, through playing the game of their life and through one of the number one teams, like the top teams in the world, just not really firing on all cylinders, Japan beat Ireland. Like, this is like
talk about that.
right? Yeah, I mean, I know you're a rugby guy. Like, it was everything had to land in place, but nothing will take away that accomplishment, and that is what draws us into competition. So like I said, I think it's to see Ireland stepping up and having their kit. I've seen them showing up now online, and seeing people get behind really, I guess you could say, not just kind of going with the front runners. That is what's so sorely needed to make this entire industry and any competitive industry viable. I mean, like, look at our turnout for Toronto AF meetups. We have one of the strongest and cohesive fan systems, ecosystems, and our team finished in second last place, basically, right? Like, we didn't have the best season, but like, that's an amazing thing, right? That and I said, but that's Toronto.
Yeah.
Like, Toronto's always about the losing. We never make it, other than the Raptors. I don't want to talk about the Leafs.
And even
God
the Raptors
forbid,
was the first time in 25 years that we and
TFC, they pulled it off. These poor guys never get included, and like the Argos. We won, our 2 Grey Cups, but God, I don't want to talk about the Argos right now. It's a dark time. I just see them walking down the street every now and then, though, which always fascinates me about the CFL here in Toronto.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this is a pretty good. No, so for one, I completely agree. I actually cannot wait for the World Cup. Like, I'm super, super excited. I think I'm excited than more excited for the World Cup than your average person. I absolutely cannot wait to see how that plays out. But I think that this is a pretty good transition into Toronto finishing second last to where do you think they're going to go with their roster moving into 2020? I mean, does anyone have any objections to that?
Let's go for it.
Let's do it.
Let's go for it.
Okay, so I mean, I think I might as well just get started because obviously, first and foremost, let's just talk about the players who have been, I don't want to say let go, but have left us. And then we can talk about Roki, who seems, as of right now, is the only member to be like re-signed on a 2-way contract. So are you surprised by any of the players so far who have been let go? And for those of you who don't know, and I'm going off the top of my head here, but I believe it was Aid, I'm 37, Sherrick, and Gods are the 4, right? Those are the 4 that have been.
Yes, that's correct.
And obviously the head coach, who was promoted from the Montreal Rebellion, his name escapes me currently, but he also left. So those are the ones who have left. Do any of those guys surprise you?
So the short answer is no, not really. Our team, look, we almost, if there was something that could go wrong for us, like even in like a team fight, it did. That was sort of Toronto's plight. It was such a Defiant, were like such a Toronto team. Like, even when they ought to have won, like literally the universe plotted against the team.
Yeah.
So I always say going back to our stage 1. So I was one of the lucky people who had Stellar in his fantasy pool, because everyone's like, who the hell's Stellar?
Yeah.
And basically, I remember as the team was heading into their first game, and I looked at the free agents that were available in the league, because I missed draft day, so I basically only got the Dallas Fuel. It was really funny. My team was the Dallas Fuel. It was the weirdest auto draft team. So don't trust auto drafting, okay?
Oh,
so
never,
anyway,
never.
I could dump everybody. So basically, I went and I said, okay, I need to know who the Brig is on every single team. And I basically filled up my fantasy team with only those who played Brig.
Yeah.
So I asked Jay, I was like, hey, if you're allowed to tell me, can you tell me who's going to play Brig for Defiant? And he goes, it'll be Stellar. I'm like, great. He's going to be on the jersey that I get. And I added him to the team.
Yeah.
If you look at the fantasy pool points for Stellar in that first stage, he rocked it. If you had Stellar, you basically won. So our team was built around that, right? But then once he stepped away, the entire team went into sort of backfill modes, because we had another stage of goats to go through, and you could see, you could tell right away.
I could, this is another.
I'm very, very critical. It's the one thing I can be critical of in gameplay, because I've dumped so many hours into Brig. I still play Brig right now. Yeah. Like, when it gets dusty, it's almost always a Moira. But if you're in a fist fight, I go Brig, because even in double shields, you can throw heals. But anyway, I digress. You could tell, even when IM37 came in, he had to learn the hero. His distances were off, didn't have the whip shot down. But our team has been sort of backfilling continuously since that time, it's all running line changes, but there comes a time when you actually have to just change the lines. You can't have running line changes forever. You have to make a system. So the changes we have kind of make sense. Exactly. So I think DPS right now, we know that basically you either have to be extremely flexible or a Doomfist, or like not a hit scan. So that really takes away from people who can't flex between a projectile to a hit scan to just like I'm going to be Reaper or May. Like you've got to be able to balance on those fronts. So the changes don't make a ton of like the changes make a lot of sense to me because we knew we had to build up a more cohesive tank line over time. It's going to have to happen. Our DPS, we've got a great DPS in Logix, and we have an incredible DPS specialist in Mangachu. But then it's like, how do you choose the right components outside of that? And then on the support line, it's sort of the same challenge. Like, think about it. If anybody who spent a lot of time on an Ana or a Zenyatta and doesn't want to flex around a little bit or doesn't want to kind of join the cult of Moira, it's hard, right, to build a team. And the truth is different players have different aspirations and interests. So it kind of makes sense. I'm really curious that and take a look at the free agent market right now, right?
Yeah,
So
we're
that's what we-
going
that's-
now is the time to make the change, not later in the season when everybody's signed.
So I completely agree. One of the things I was going to talk about was I do think that the IM37 experiment, one, was misplaced. I think when you're 5-2, you don't need to pick up a player as risky as that, especially a player who didn't ever really have experience playing Brig. Like, not only were they unexperienced in the Overwatch League as a whole, but then you also bring them into that pressure and that environment, and then also say, hey, learn a brand new hero. So I think that is was a huge misstep, especially in hindsight. I know hindsight's easier. Hindsight's 2020. But that I did think contribute to a large part. And you're right. At the end of the day, chemistry is a big thing in sports, right?
Absolutely.
It's great to try out things, but at the end of the day, the lines in the NHL that have been there from the start are the ones that are the most effective, right? Like, you do need to build chemistry. You do need to build that coordination. And then we kind of it went from being all Korean, and then instead of us going like, you know what, we're done with all Korean roster, we're going to a Western speaking roster. It was like we didn't want to give up the all Korean, so we had like half and half. Which is fine if you want to go from like the very beginning, but to do like stage 3, all of a sudden half your team, you know what I mean? I think there wasn't enough time for us to build that cohesion to run the mixed roster. If you're going to go mixed, you need to go from the start, and you need to just accept the fact that this is what it's going to be, and you need to do what the Charge did, right? The Charge went from mixed. Stage 1 wasn't their best, and then as the Overwatch League season progressed, the players started to pick up their chemistry and they started to perform a lot better. But
hey, look, the Vancouver Titans, 100% chemistry.
Oh, 100%. One of the best teams, too, right?
Plus Huxall being a filthy doofus.
Oh, yeah,
but
a chemistry and talent, right? At some point, chemistry only goes so far.
But a ton of chemistry. A ton.
No,
until the grand finals, but
we don't talk about that.
Also, your season is not a failure if you get 4-0'd in the grand finals. I would do a lot for Toronto to get 4-0'd in the grand finals, right? Second last. And grand finals.
They were 0-2 already on before, so they've been playing together for a while.
But that's what I'm saying. But the people in 0-2 already on, there was only like 3 of them, and one of those people was Stellar.
Oh yeah.
Oh, sorry, not O2 Ardeon. Who is?
Vancouver's Runaway. That's who they
Runaway. Yes,
Toronto was O2 Ardeon. Yeah. But yeah. So, and I completely agree. If you're Toronto Defiant, like, you can't sell me. So in Overwatch League, there's no benefit to tanking, right? There's no draft. So there's no. People go like, it's a rebuilding year. I'm like, that doesn't even make any sense. Because there's no draft. So you can't just like tank and then get the next best prospect. That's not a thing in the Overwatch League. And you can't strive for mediocrity. So there's no way that you can sell me and running it back with majority the same or similar pieces as last year and expect any other sort of result. So, I mean, I'm personally, as much as I loved a lot of the players that were on the team last year, and it was sad to see some of these players go, I completely agree. And I think that these are just the beginning. Like, I was surprised even Roki got brought on for a 2-way contract, but at least it's 2-way, so I like keeping his brand.
Hey, you take that back, no. Otherwise I'm gonna send the Roki fan club after you.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm gonna beat you with those Roki heads.
And that's a large fan club.
You know what?
So don't get me wrong. I like the fact that he built this fan base, and I like the fact that it was a 2-way contract. But I think like if you have Yakpong, Neko and Ivy are interesting, but I think at the end of the day, the only people you bring back for like roster slots, guaranteed Overwatch League roster slots, are Mangachu for sure, and then maybe Logix. And the only reason I say maybe Logix is because there's a guy out there right now who I'd pay a lot of money to come play for Toronto. And if you can get him, maybe you set Logix aside, or you put him on the bench, or you put him on a different contract. But that's the only way, shape, or form.
Who may that be, Spencer?
Otherwise, I bring back Logix and Mangachu.
So Spencer, who is that person? I feel like you've teased us.
Flip a coin, rabbit out of a hat. Oh, sure for it, no doubt. No doubt in my mind, if I'm the Toronto Defiant, I was. And I understand. Hey, if you want to go pure skill, we can have the debate all day and night. And I actually might agree with you. Do I think Surefour is the best skilled free agent right now? No. And do I think that the difference between Logic and Surefour is as great to warrant the high contract that would be required to get Surefour's contract? Also, probably not. But you're talking about before. This team needs an identity. You're now going into the 2020 season where you need to sell tickets. You need to have a homestand. This team needs a face. And while Mangachu is a great face, he's got a good one. Surefour is like the most popular Western player. He goes on Twitch. He gets 1,500 viewers. He's Canadian. He has the experience. I think from building a brand, you have to include that when you think about who do you want to sign for next year's roster.
Don't you think that would turn us a little bit weeby?
Well, no, because he's also a great player. He's also a great player.
I'm just saying, like I've got nothing against it, but I'm just saying, I get it. My hunch is this. Look, I don't pretend to know any of the backroom dealings or I'm just a dude who loves to hang out with people and do things, right?
Us too, right? I'm not in the
and my hunch though is that I would be curious. I don't know, right? I wish I could have the inside baseball on why he sat so much last season before I dumped a ton of money.
Yeah, but what was
right?
It was the meta, right? It was DK was playing.
Okay.
He was playing before DK, and DK was like $200,000 salary bid. At some point, if you pay $200,000 to bring DK onto your roster, you have to play him.
Okay.
And Surefour would have been the Zarya, and Surefour was playing Zarya before DK came in. But fair, no, fair. Is there attitude issues? You're right.
I don't know. What I'm saying is, it's mostly that, and it also comes down to flexibility. The game's always changing.
No, for
right?
sure.
Look, I lived through New York, having to go through when GOATs got introduced. Well, it's the beginnings of that, but the very early break kind of came through, right? I saw, I was there at the emergence of the best tracer in the world, aka Sayobi. And I will still stand by that because I've seen him do things that no human should be able to do. But I don't know. I guess it's one of those cases where I think what's also important, I've always felt, right, for the team or any team, right, is the solution to finding local affinity is not just to have people from here. John Tavares is the captain of the Maple Leafs now. People love Austin Matthews, even though he's got that horrible mustache. And that kid is about as far from Toronto born as you can get.
Yeah.
So my thinking around that is, we've got Mangachu, who's an awesome kid from Oakville.
Love
and
Mangachu.
let's and I think that I always joke, how many Canadians do you think you need to have before you feel like you have street cred here, right?
Yeah, but do you not think that a Surefour Mangachu 222 DPS lock would not be filthy for one, building your brand, but also just in terms of skill?
I think it's pretty awesome.
They have chemistry playing in the World Cup.
I see Mangachu as Logix, you gotta remember, did some it was incredible.
No, you're not
right.
Logix
is effing incredible, and he specifically did incredible things within our system.
Yep.
Now you have to remember too, we're in the midst of searching for a coach.
No,
so
sure.
that will ultimately, I think, to me, that's probably why we haven't seen some of the big moves yet. I mean, who knows what's signed to paper? We don't know. But my hunch, though, is that a lot of this will come down to what the system is that we're playing in, because we know we're going to see a lot of double shield.
Yeah.
Knock on something that it might change. But look, let's just assume it's a lot of double shield. And even that meta will evolve a little bit.
Well, exactly. You can't really build your team around double shield because who knows what the meta is going to be like in stage 4 of next year, right? At this point, you kind of just need players that can be flexible. And you kind of need players. That's why I like Surefour. Surefour has experience, and he's definitely more of a hit scan, in terms of his flexibility. But you also have Mangachu, and I would still keep Logix on the bench. Realistically, double sniper might be a thing. Who knows, right? And then at that point, you can run Logix and Surefour, and that sounds awesome. So I would
absolutely.
I wouldn't just drop Logix. He definitely brings value, and the issue is I don't know what the contract structure is like. I don't know what the soft salary cap is like. I don't know how much money Toronto is willing to spend. But if I'm Toronto and there's a lot of
intangibles.
Exactly. But if I'm trying to find an identity and I'm trying to find a face of the franchise and people I want to build around, Paris Eternal became Europe's team. The Hunters became China's team. Houston kind of tries to be America's team. Vancouver's not going to be Canada's team. So if I'm the Toronto Defiant, I see a market there, as well as we have some pretty good players. So
we do. Hey, so I'm curious. Why isn't I love Toronto, but why isn't Vancouver Canada's team?
No, sorry. In terms of I meant in terms of like what you build your roster. Like the Hunters are like all Chinese roster, right? That's what I was trying to get at, because there's still other Chinese.
Oh yeah.
And the Houston Outlaws, like they went with like Ruckus and Muma, right? They have like a lot of like a Jake American talent, right? And like
but they didn't do that well.
No, you're right. So
I'm just saying, right? I would say the Shock. I feel like the Shock is America's team. Because you represent, like, you have a mix of people who came together to kick butt.
And Shock was obviously a way better team.
Their motto is "E pluribus unum." From many, one.
Yeah.
I think the Shock are the greatest American team right now.
Absolutely. And
in a lot of ways.
Stacked.
Yeah, and it's stacked with people, like, in many ways, the best from around the world, and it is friggin' cool. Like, look, it helps to have a pocketbook that's open. We've all seen this.
Yeah.
I remember the battle days of hockey pre-salary cap. I remember what that was like. I think it's interesting, but I think what's going to happen, though, is I think it's going to come down to what they decide on the system being. Because even the best player in the wrong system will be nerfed completely. We've seen that. Yeah. We've seen that happen, and we've also seen players elevate because of a system. And look at Bumper, right? The system and the way of play, the means of playing the game.
Yeah.
Made Bumper he did some pretty insane stuff that he shouldn't have survived, but the team knew exactly when to pump the heals in versus the damage boosters, but more importantly, they could work well together. But I think what we've really learned in over the course of the year, this year especially, is the team's chemistry, more than anything, will make or break their ability to adapt. It's not about winning right now in the system, because that's comfortable. It's something we know. But when you have to face the adversity, and the adversity is unknown, the only thing that holds a team together is character, conduct, and integrity.
So who's your go-to? Because I have a person in mind who I think fits that perfectly, and I'm going to bring them up screen and spoil myself. But if you had to pick because obviously that was something we lacked last year, right? Our ability to adapt mid, that was something we definitely need. And I wouldn't bring Sherfer on to be the lead shot caller. You know what I mean? Definitely not.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, again, I'm pretty bad when it comes to like tanks. You have your pick of it. I mean, I'm making this up. Obviously, Meko is going back to New York. Like, you would have to offer, I think, an amount of money that is not feasible for most CFOs to ever clear. But if we didn't care about that, anybody could have Meko. But I'm just saying, realistically, it's not going to happen.
But let me throw a name out here for
Meko's available, Note's available.
I think Note would be great too. Note and Nevix would be my two for the off tank. If I had to pick somebody, Note and Nevix, I would be looking at both.
Nevix he's a bad man. That would be something I would go for. And then but like I said, the tanks available right now are ridiculous. That's what I love, right?
Especially main tanks, a little bit less so.
God.
Main tanks,
we need some tanks too, don't we?
Well, no,
we need
I think Nevix
a little bit of everything.
At this point, I think we need everyone. Essentially, aside from maybe let's say for argument's sake, you keep the two DVS players. You basically need an entirely new roster. So you need two support players, one main tank, one off tank player. But that one of the reasons I was going to bring up, and I want to get your opinion because you followed him probably so much throughout his career, is I would love to see Ark in a Toronto Defiant uniform. I don't know about you guys. I just think his ability to shot call and lead.
All I could say is if you want to know my opinion on that, you just have to go to the NYXL Discord.
I'm not a part of the NYSL Discord.
Okay. No go for you.
My answer would be no.
Okay.
And yeah, but I saw a little bit of what happened right around that team, and I also remember what some of the comments were after that first season. Both from obviously people within the community, but also from the players themselves.
Yep.
And if there's one simple truth about New York, is that New York remembers.
Interesting.
And the people of New York will always remember, and I love this about the city, because there's two folks. There's myself and another fellow that you'll find who we have exactly the same opinion on this. Fellow by the name of Maserati. You'll see him again. But he's a dude from Staten Island. Great human being. big 5DV guy, but we have the same opinion of Ark, and it's that, especially when you think about how supports operate, right? Real game day mentality stuff. When you face a situation where you actually find out that people ultimately want to leave the team because they feel that they took a big loss, they need a change of scenery to try something new. That's not somebody I'd ever build a team around.
Okay.
You got to face down adversity. You got to fight, right? Like you think and that's a whole thing though. That like in the end, if the idea is it didn't go well, I'm gonna go somewhere else. I need to find a new place. Like the team's not saying they want you to go, right? No one's saying that. But if it's your choice, then it happens. It's why the joke in New York always is like, we always joke. Someone's like, "Hey, how about Ark?" And I was like, "Who's that guy?"
Yeah.
Right, but the joke always is that you turn your back on if you turn your back on New York, you choose to leave. Don't let the door hit you on the butt on the way out, right?
Yeah.
It's a challenge. Honestly, I don't know. Like support's really tough because again, like we know that there's Moiras, Lucios, really over the top talented Mercies, and then like obviously like and then like I joke like Overwatch League level, Pro League level competent BAPs, right? Is the big sort of thing right now. I honestly, I don't know because, and I'm not gonna sort of say like I don't want to like sort of drop names of players. The problem is that the system is so weird right now. I'm not sure, and actually like from a more practical experience, I'm not sure Arc would be flexible enough on the support side, right? To flip around all the types of supports as a main, right? I don't know if it would be the right fit.
If you're the main support, your main goal really would be the Lucio Mercy, at least traditionally, and then maybe your ability to flex to the Baptiste when necessary.
Yeah, right. But look, I've seen Arc nail like sleep darts from like through basically through buildings. It was the craziest thing I'd ever seen, right? But it's a tricky thing, honestly, because we know like he had some great honor work, but you're not going to use a ton of honor right now.
No, and if you wanted honor, it'd probably be your flex support player too, right? Because
correct.
I mean, you never know the meta. Honor Zenyatta could totally be a meta, right? You never know, but that's usually
and that's what gets kind of interesting too, because if there's anything that opens up the Zenyatta potential again, you got obviously the Discord orb is so powerful that you do want to get that back in. It just doesn't work right now.
But with Lucio's newest buffs in the Overwatch League under patch notes, I think having a good Salt Lucio player who can shot call, I think is going to be important. But again, now we're talking like meta predictions.
And that's the whole thing too, right? Like Winston's patches are coming in, but we don't know what it will really look like.
That's a good point.
Because Winston's bring out Briggs, because you can hit those giant monkeys on their way in all the time. Much easier to hit than the hamsters, right? At times. But again, I have a feeling like I know I've been repeating this, but there's so much within the system, and it's going to come down to the coach's vision on this. I think that's going to dictate who goes, and I think it's going to come down to, do they think that people can work well together? And without knowing how a roster is constructed, is it going to be primarily English speaking or Korean or other, right? I'm just making it up, right?
Yeah, I think you go permanently Western speaking, just because I do think your Logix and Mangature are the two people you build around right now, if you have to choose to.
Yep.
And that's just my opinion. Obviously, I'm not the GM. I don't have any inside information. So that's why I throw names like Nevix, I throw names like Arc, and hell, I would throw a name. And I know you don't like the idea of just going with this Canadian roster, but if we could get Crimzo, he's apparently having a sick.
What about
contenders.
Note?
Note's an honorable mention.
Note I would love. Note I would love, right? Who doesn't want a kid from Barrie, right?
No, I completely agree.
Who grew up not playing hockey. Like, that makes Note so... I mean, he's so endearing like that. Plus, like, I always joke, if you had, like, Note and Mangachu, you just have these two really weirdly tall people.
Yeah.
So it's just like...
Wait, how tall
it's
is
great.
Note?
It's taller enough for me to be like, oh, you're much bigger than I realized. I mean, Mangachu was, like, weirdly tall. I'm like, wow, you're very tall. No, but again, like I said, it's one of those funny cases where it's like, I always feel like it's like when free agency hits the NHL, we all kind of like make our roster team, but like it's because it's the team that we built in Chell.
No, absolutely. But that's like fun, right? I like doing this. Like, I don't mind doing that. I like building my team in Chell.
Okay, what about coaches though? Like, do any of you guys know any type of coach that we get? Like, we're missing two key coaches right now. Like, I don't even know where to start looking for one of those.
No,
guys.
I know. And then so many coaches were recently let go, and then you'd have to fit your culture, and you would definitely have to decide if you wanted a Korean-speaking roster, mixed roster, or Western-speaking roster. That would narrow down your coach selection as well. You're absolutely right. And I'm not going to act like I can list off top 5 coaches. I can't.
Coaches, forget about it. Like, it's like leave me out of this one because I'm just gonna. I'll be making up names. I'll be like
exactly.
that guy.
The guy from LA.
Yeah.
No.
Jane? Can we get Jane, please?
Yeah. Just steal Jane from Dallas. Fuel.
We want a Canadian team. We gotta have Jane.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see that happening anytime soon. But hey, American dream, right? But
Exactly.
But I would like. I think no. My only issue with Note is that he's got a fantastic diva. I don't know how, because now that it's 2-2-2, I don't know what his Sigma's like, and we might find out the Overwatch World Cup. I was never really super impressed with his Hog. In fact, even at the Team Canada scrims, I actually think Muffin was a noticeably superior Hog to him when they switched over to Hog. So I watched all those VOD reviews, and I was like, every time Muffin came on, I was like, oh yeah, their divas are pretty comparable, but like Hog, I thought Note struggled a little bit, and I haven't seen his Zarya. So I mean, if it was like a diva meta and we just make the assumption that diva's going to be meta all of next year, absolutely. I think Noah's one of the best divas, pure divas in the league, but I am not fully sure how flexible he'll be, and hopefully we find that out at the World Cup. Hopefully he plays a lot of Sigma, and I'm rooting for him by all means. But that would just be my one slight hesitation towards
Yeah, and the Sigmas are very important right now.
Super important.
Like super important. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's all I can say is, man, I can't imagine a lot of other competitive environments that have this much change, like potential roster moves, potential strategy moves. I kind of love the insanity of this, because it's actually the closest to reflecting, I think, sort of the general like feeling of humanity these days. We're like, wow, lots of stuff's crazy, but you have to adapt and you have to go on. It's one of the reasons why I love Overwatch. Esports in general, it's that it's such a reflection of the human condition. You know, you never know what's coming down the line next, but man, that is every day for so many people, and it's why I love it for Toronto. I mean, the joke is the streetcar running? I don't know. Is line 1 shut down? I don't know. Which station is it shut down below? Who knows? Is Liberty Village flooding? Maybe. You know, ice storms coming in? Possibly. Rent? I don't know. No controls. Exactly. It's such a Toronto style of game where you're just running into insanity of life, and I don't know. It's I dig it. Sometimes it's kind of boring. I always joke, like, NBA seasons when there's no free agency are just not fun. Like in the off season, no, they kind of stink.
The NBA slowly became one of my favorite professional sports leagues. Honestly, to the point where sometimes I like it more than NHL because of how nutty the off season is. Right, trade deadline, tons of superstars exchange teams. Free agency, ton of player power, right? Where a ton of superstars exchange teams. I love that. I think it's super interesting. I love the fact that Overwatch sort of has that as well. I cannot wait for Toronto to announce their team and to announce their updated roster changes. And again,
I think it's going to be bonkers.
Yeah, I'm throwing a lot of money at Surefour. I'm throwing a lot of money at Nevix. I think if you could pick up a guy like Crimzo, or if you can't get Nevix to go for a guy like Note, there's a lot of, even if you want to go to the contenders, you get like Elk, Funny Astro, Sleepy, I wouldn't mind on Toronto if you don't get a guy like Crimzo. I think Sleepy is a really, really good flex support player. Like, I think there's a lot of options if you're the Toronto Defiant. You just have to kind of go out there and put the money forward. And I mean, obviously, a lot of teams are going to be vying for these people, but I think you can make it happen.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we got to remember too. I'm sure there's going to be a small bidding war. On Surefour. Oh, by the way, I also we didn't mention him. Kareev would be pretty awesome too.
Is
there's a lot.
Is Kareev?
He's available.
He is available.
He's available. Yeah, it's nuts, man. Like. And this is going to be an awesome thing where it's like, hey, sources say LeBron's going to the Lakers and blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, ha, 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 Clippers. You know it's going to happen. That's what I'm actually really waiting for, and I can't wait for this offseason, is that someone's going to have that, like, dirt sheet note, and everyone's going to glom onto it, and it's going to be the exact opposite team. It's like you're going to sign to the Leafs, you go to the Habs.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah.
I'm an Oilers fan. I get to poke at everybody because my team's terrible.
And Chris both.
Oh, rest in peace, Oilers.
Hey, but we started kind of okay. We're kind of like, I'm
That's
holding on to
always
this,
how we
okay?
start.
James Neal's a god,
Let's
apparently.
Always
So.
start kind of okay.
Yeah, when James Neal is your god, you're like, okay, then.
Hey, man,
What
James
is
Neal can
happening?
keep scoring a goal a game, and you guys still have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. I think you're gonna be okay.
I know. Look,
Once
I'm
Adam
the guy
Larson
with
comes
the.
back-
I have a Yamamoto jersey, okay? Like I'm like that
I like
dedicated to the
Yamamoto.
rig.
No, for
I'm
sure.
that dedicated to the rig. I actually found a proper Adidas, like their actual
Yeah.
like fight strap and all, like proper ice level jersey, fully crested with a Yamamoto, and I got it. But now, full disclosure, it only cost me $50 because I found it at a warehouse. But I have an actual ice level, like pro level Yamamoto jersey. I just need that guy to make it to the damn team.
Yeah, no. We'll
feel
see. I'm
that.
super. So I did, just for the record, looked it up though. Kareev is actually under contract for the Valiant, so he's not a free agent.
Oh,
unfortunately. I know.
okay.
It's
I thought he
fine.
was. I
Yeah,
thought he was.
It
Huh.
happens. There's someone, I forget the author of this article, but they released like all of the contract statuses for all of the teams, which is pretty cool. So it's Mr. X, Matt Morello.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that's cool. That's why like Toronto's basically all team options.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens next year.
Or just paying, or just buying, right? You can. It's like soccer, right? You just
no,
buy
you
players.
can trade. You for sure can make the trade for Kareev. Absolutely.
Yeah. Trade for money. No, I'm just kidding.
No, yeah, and
Yeah.
there's some players who I'd love to see us try to go
Yeah.
and trade. And Surefour is gonna have a bidding war. So is Nevix. Obviously, these like dream lists. Like, I don't know what Super's contract situations like, and I don't think there's a scenario where San Francisco gives him up.
No.
But if you're
no,
Super,
no
you don't
way.
want to play on the bench, right? Like, why play Smurf throughout the entire grand finals? I mean, I know he was just on Jimmy Fallon, that's the issue, and he is under contract. But could you not maybe throw money and try to get him from San Francisco? Like, I don't think so either. But why have him as your backup main tank? Because
It's always listen, man.
they
It's
showed he
always
played
good to
Smurf
have a.
with- You're not wrong.
Someone can get sick at any time.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
And you don't want the person coming in to not be up to snuff.
But
That's how I
Super's
see
so
it.
good. He's so good. He's too good to play on the bench. It's so unfortunate, in my opinion.
I
to see
mean-
Yeah,
Super on the
he's
bench.
almost a franchise nigga. Like almost. He's not quite there, but he's almost. A
You know,
franchise.
really good.
what I joke is like, do you remember the days like when you could have Mike Richter and John Van Beesbrook as your goalies, or you could have Andy Moog and Grant Fuhrer as your
No,
goalies?
that's a little bit
Like-
before my time, but I know what you mean.
Those are great days, man.
Yeah.
When Moog was the backup, that's pretty crazy. But it's mostly like it does help. You will win. Do you know what I mean? I think as long
San
as there's the
Francisco
financial
did, like,
viability
by far
there,
the best
yeah.
bench in the league,
And
right?
look,
No
in
one
the
had a
end-
bench in San Francisco.
And like again, and same with the Warriors and the Raptors had a great bench too.
No, you're not wrong.
Right. So I think that's actually something that a lot of people will underestimate, in that the bench allows you to have talent that could have slightly different skill sets, which allows you to handle meta changes. That's why at San Francisco I would never give up Super, because if something changes and Super happens to be better at it at his high level of play, you'll have given him up for money when you don't need it.
No, absolutely. And if I'm San Francisco, I don't give him up either. I'm just saying, obviously from a
Yeah.
fan, I want to see him play. And man, would I want to see him play for Toronto Defiant? But that's
I
agree,
know,
that's
but
like
we
the
have-
least likely. No, I totally agree.
But we have Roki, and that is awesome. Here's the thing: like I know we're kind of joking about the Roki fan club coming and beating you into submission with those Roki masks until you two have a Roki mask and a black eye. But this is actually to
We
me,
love
and
Roki.
this is really important, and I can't stress this enough. If there's going to be a part of this that somebody clips, this is probably it. One of the biggest challenges facing esports, and even and Overwatch especially, right, is that when you look at how the T2 and T3 scenes are set up, how you look at how academies are set up, we don't have an intrinsic spirit of development,
Sorry,
right, in
one second.
esports.
No, you keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, everything is based on win now, swap. Everybody who's in the T2 and T3 scene, it's like, well, this team didn't work, I'm going to the next one. This team didn't work, I'm going to the next one. Everyone's
Yeah.
always trying to hop, right? But how can you learn from your mistakes if you do not develop players, right?
That's very true.
In-house developed players. So look at the Jays, okay? Look at Bichette, okay? Look at Guerrero, right? Look, these guys played in the Appalachian League, man, in West Virginia. Okay, you have to develop talent, and Roki, and the decision to sign him to a two-way, it really gives me a lot of confidence, and how the organization, our team at least, can run, because here's somebody who we know needs a bit more seasoning. Primarily has to work on communications in English, right?
Mm.
But the thing is, if you believe that, if that is their weakness, and you believe in development of talent, this is exactly the contract you would sign them to.
No.
And I think that is a powerful statement from Defiant as an organization, saying, just start like it's probably part of Jay's vision. Like sometimes you just have to try to develop more, and then you make the decision. You don't just cut because you didn't win right away.
Yeah. So I agree that the two-way contract of Roki's extension, I think, is the key part to making this a really good deal.
100%.
Where I go, okay, maybe not. But the one thing I didn't like last year, and I mean, if you're saying, hey, work on his English and work on his communications, then I agree. But like last year, I always thought it was weird that our Toronto Defiant was a full Korean roster, and then we announced our farm team, Montreal Rebellion, of all English-speaking players. And I was like, this makes no sense to me. Because then if you want to call somebody up, they're speaking a different language, and you saw that's what happened. We called up Gods, Mangachu, Logics, and then your team's half and half, and I think you struggle a little bit. So,
yeah.
So if you're gonna go, I don't want Montreal Rebellion. Like if it's Roki and working his communications, and honestly, if you want another player to go two-way to develop more, I wouldn't mind seeing Yakpung on the Montreal Rebellion. I still think Yakpung has potential. Yeah. Had a rough year.
Yakpung. I mean, you folks have heard me say this. There's no better Yakpung than an angry Yakpung.
Yeah.
Like when he, when he kind of laid it into some folks, it was incredible to see. Yeah. My favorite was when he was going ham at Gibraltar. I can't remember what game it was, but it was like he was the angriest Yakpung we'd ever seen, and he like achieved his final form, and it was like it was amazing. Yeah. I'm a big Yakpung fan. I'm not sure. Like I said, I can't speak to where the system is, but you're right. That's somebody who would benefit from that.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. It was a little bit strange to have an academy team that wasn't, would it be off-the-shelf compatible? Yeah. It's a little bit funny.
So I remember that thinking that was interesting. And I think I agree. Yakpung's super aggressive. You get in the right, like Winston, aggressive diving meta, I think Yakpung can shine, and just give him time, work on his communications, work on his seasoning. He's young too, right? Give him a little bit more reps, a little bit more experience. I think he could be a really good main tank someday as well. So that's another player I wouldn't mind seeing on the two-way.
Yeah, and we are going to have to face down the reality, right? That if I'm not mistaken, right, the contenders teams are going to have to eventually localize in terms of their talent development. So it's going to push us into having a Western, like an English-speaking team, no matter what happens. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen over time. Otherwise, they'll be put into the Korea contender system, right? Which is fine as well too, right? It's a heck of a lot more competitive, and hey, we'll even churn out better players, right? It's okay. But no, like I said, I think that I'm actually very curious to see what goes on with Rebellion. I think that's a big piece of Defiant's season. It's how, because everything's getting closer to the structure of these more like localized pyramids, right? Yeah. Of development. I'm really curious to see what happens around the Rebellion this year, because I feel that's going to give us some hints. But yeah, I'm super excited to see that.
So I think that was a good cap there. I wanted to ask you, I guess, think kind of about the Alpha Flight. So you guys are now kind of like more officially affiliated with the Toronto Defiant. Mm-hmm. So where do you see Alpha Flight being in like a year or two, and where do you see yourself being in the future? Like, are you planning on running this thing kind of from the periphery? Or like periphery of your like kind of professional life, or do you want to get more involved with that?
I've always approached my time in esports almost like being a community service. Like I've never needed to look towards it as a means to sort of feed myself or put a roof over my head. And in some ways, I think that's helped, right? Because it frees me from some of the pressures that I know a lot of folks face trying to kick things off in this space. With Toronto Alpha Flight, it's been interesting. With the when the Defiance launched, look, again, full disclosure, I didn't know much about it. I didn't really know what it was, but hey, like people are quick to write things, and I said, well, let's just see what goes on. But almost within a couple days, the folks over at Defiant, just had a chat, and to turn it into a like a supporters association is not much different than what you'd see like Liverpool and Man United or Swansea doing, right, in the Premiership. It's part of how you grow international brands. So being the first charter member, I guess you could say, of the Defiance I think it's pretty amazing. I think it shows that there's a potential for public-private partnership within the esports realm in Toronto that can be sustainable and viable, in that not everybody needs to own everything all at once, and that in the end, the voices and the spirit of fans and fandom and the purity of that can maintain itself. With Defiance, we basically hammered out what would look like a lot of the standard structure. And look, I'm not gonna pretend I invented this. A lot of 5DV and this concept of supporter clubs in Overwatch League is based off of my experience growing up watching a lot of soccer. So it happens when you're a sad Aston Villa fan or a sad Norwich City fan. Anyway, this is just sort of how it goes. But what's amazing about it is it's all based off of sustainability. So, Defiant as a team is lending us support for promotion for materials. We're able to keep our identities separate, where there's opportunity to collaborate or even trade off ideas because they're better executed by one or the other. We've created the means to do that. And in some ways, what we've in effect done is Toronto, like the Defiance as a group, as an association, and Toronto Alpha Flight, we've codified a lot of what were the intangible practices that I used to have back when I was, heading up 5DV with New York Excelsior. Ben Nickel, the guy's a mensch. I don't know how else to describe him, right? Just a man of integrity and tremendous vision, right? And we just, there were times where I'd say, hey, Ben, I got this idea. It just doesn't sound right from us, but hey, you know what? It's yours. Run with it if you want. And vice versa, he would come to us and be like, hey, I had this idea. Do you think you'd want? Does this work for you guys? Because I think it'd be cool. And we traded ideas, and each of us created this. Our own. We had our own directions, but what we did was, when needed, we would come together to do what was, to really, put together something powerful. But what was amazing was it actually allowed both of our respective groups to gain a tremendous amount of insight, right, and exposure to things we might not have otherwise seen, or it would have been couched in, the natural obfuscation of the world of marketing, right, and comms. And you can build something really, really genuine. And what I think is amazing, and it's a real testament to, like I said, it's the spirit of Toronto. You gotta, no matter how big we are, we're not the biggest. So just work together, and even greater things will happen. And yeah, like I said, we've effectively codified what was an intangible, and that is important because what that means is other groups that want to do this, like say, look, if a group is coming out of St. Catharines or Kitchener Waterloo, right, or like Sault Ste. Marie, heck, you could be all the way north in like Marathon, Ontario, right? If you want to do this, now there's a means and a means to actually build this, because we can do things like figure out what a startup kit can look like for these folks, and we can make sure that no one is, sort of unduly doing too much or too little. Like, it's the spirit of partnership, and I don't know, I think it's pretty rad, man. I don't know how else to describe it. It's a good thing for everybody.
That sounds so rad. And you know what I really like about, you're not only trying to foster, the community here in Toronto, but you're also helping people if they want to start up little social clubs or things related to Toronto Defiant. You guys are helping them out too. It's, it's a multi-way, multi-channel area that you're helping build the community in Toronto, and that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, like I said, it's everything starts with communication. Heck, this game, right, makes and breaks itself on comms. I think it's something as a community we can be proud of, that we've built up a strong enough structure and cohesion and relative amount of goodwill that an organization can see value in what we have to say and what we believe in. There's not a lot of times where, I guess you could say, a lot of folks these days may feel like they don't have a voice in things, that the only way they can participate is to buy more of something. And I think what we're showing in Toronto is that actually we believe that the way to do this is to partner at all levels and grow it together. And that's really what makes Toronto work, right? It never quite works when it's just one person doing everything. Someone else always You know, it never quite goes over smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a ton of confidence in where we're going.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Now, I think that's most of the stuff we wanted to cover. I wanted to ask if you wanted to leave one thing with our listeners. If there's any one thing you leave them, what would it be?
Sorry, leave like one. Sorry, you cut out a little bit there. I lost you there.
Oopsies. Is there
That's okay.
anything I kind of like leave with our listeners? Plug or anything,
Okay.
or
Yeah, I like to plug in.
or-
Okay, sorry, Chris is cutting out a little
Okay.
bit. Just to give a
Okay.
plug or like one last event or like one last sentiment that you kind of want to leave before you.
Okay.
Head out.
So I would say, stay tuned for some. Look, the World Cup's around the corner, and as much as Gauntlet is a big thing right now, but let's make sure. Let's get out there. Let's support Team Canada when they make that push. We're probably going to put on some watch parties with Toronto AF. If Defiant, if the Defiance doesn't hold one on their own, but either way, regardless of what happens, okay, this is the World Cup. We need to go out and we have to show support, beyond just what we see within the league. Like, this is a big thing for all of us. This is where the stars are born. We saw Fusions, the legend of Fusions in Gushue born last year.
Yep.
Let's go out there and let's see what happens. But then, most of all, like a lot of folks are always trying to grow things. I get a lot of questions now about how to break into esports and what to do. And I always tell folks, just remember, some folks that you're going to run into may not fully know what is needed to be done. Sometimes things happen because of luck or a conflation of things, right? So most of all, always ask questions. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. And the most important thing, and the best way to do that, is to sometimes get out of the house and randomly run into people at meetups, whatever they may be. It could be an AF Overwatch thing. It could be something, with the organized gaming guys. It could be an NBA 2K event. But get out of the house, meet people, talk to them face to face. That is the single most important thing we can do to preserve this scene and the world that we want to create. We're not going to do it just by sitting behind keyboards. You got to reach out, meet people, shake their hands, and go out and practice, because your delivery will never be that good until you practice. And for the record, I used to have a really bad speech impediment, a stutter, and I was once told I had no future ever doing a presentation in front of the public. So remember that it only comes through practice and just getting out there. So just go out, and as much as we love Overwatch, go out and see the world, man. That is the most important thing in the world.
So just real quickly then, any prediction for Canada in the World Cup? What place do you think we're gonna get? Quick prediction.
Quick.
I say probably third place.
Third place, yeah.
Yeah, I got us in third. I got us in third.
I like it. It's a good one.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Richard, for being on our show today, and appreciate all your insights. And for everybody listening, there will be another episode coming out next week. Or soon around then.
Whenever we get around to it.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
It was a blast, man. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, thank you so much. Listen, you guys take care, okay?
You as well, man. All right, bye.
All right.